Pragmata is one of those games where the longer I played it, the more I kept thinking, this game is actually doing something special. And I don't mean that like fake launch week type of hype where everybody acts like the game has changed their life for like 12 days until the next big game comes out and then nobody talks about it again. I mean, Pragmata actually kept me interested throughout the entire time. And every time I thought I had the game figured out, it would start showing me another reason or a system or a mechanic to keep me paying attention and to keep me interested. The originality and the innovation, that's what pulled me in and kept me here. Capcom easily could have just played it safe. Another sequel, another remake, another game with a name everybody already trusts. And look, I'm not even against that. I actually like remakes, I like sequels. I have videos talking about how good I think Capcom personally is at sequels and remakes. But Pragmata feels different because it actually has to prove itself on its own, which in today's video game landscape is not an easy thing to do. New world, new characters, weird sci-fi setup, a combat system that takes more than a couple minutes to explain properly, a gameplay loop that doesn't feel like it's just copied out of the typical how to make a AAA game instruction manual that you see nowadays. And that's why I wanted to talk about it, because this is the kind of big budget game I want more of. Something specific, something strange, something that feels like the gameplay and the game mechanics actually came first, and then everything else get built around that second. And later in the video, I do want to bring up one thing I figured out during my playthrough earlier on that made the game way better for me. I actually restarted my playthrough about 6 hours in because of it. I'll save it for later on when we talk about Pragmata systems, but I think it's an actual real life hack you should definitely do to make the game much more enjoyable for yourself, but we'll talk about that later. But first, we need to talk about all the things that make Pragmata work in the first place. I'm not going to be spoiling any major story beats or late game stuff that you would want to kind of see on your own or experience on your own for the first time, but I am going to be going into depth about everything else while avoiding ruining the game for anybody who hasn't played it. Also, this video isn't a review, it's much more about the bigger picture of it all. So let's hang out, talk about what is one of the best games that's released in a very long time, and what makes it so special, and why it matters for our hobby in the bigger picture side of things. The first thing I think people need to understand about Pragmata is the hacking. Because if you just describe it as puzzles during combat, which is kind of what it looks like, that sounds terrible and it's not accurate of what it actually is. That makes it sound like the game keeps stopping every fight just to do some kind of mental challenge, and that's not how it feels or what it is at all. The hacking feels more like this little combat mini game happening inside the actual fight. You're still moving, aiming, dodging, watching for enemies, managing distances, picking all your shots. All of that normal action game stuff is all happening simultaneously. But at the same time, Diana is changing how you control the fight through the hacking system, and managing all this at the same time is actually surprisingly intuitive. Weirdly enough, the closest comparison that came to mind for me was Mega Man Battle Network, and not because Pragmata plays anything like that, because it obviously doesn't, but it has a little bit of that same idea and DNA where combat is not only attacking, you're also manipulating the separate systems around that, and that affects how the fight plays out. And that's a big part of what makes the combat interesting. You're shooting enemies, but you're also setting them up at the same time. So you're trying to create these openings. You're using Diana to weaken them, control them, break them down, or give yourself a better chance to rush in and do damage. And once the upgrades and mods start opening up, that system gets way more fun than it looks when you're just watching it. For me, I leaned hard into mods that helped with immobilizing enemies. I liked locking them down, rushing them in with shotguns, using stasis nets, and basically bullying enemies into not being able to move too much. Confusing them and making them attack each other was always fun to watch play out when it worked. But that was just my way of playing. You could easily build around hacking differently. You could focus on different weapons, different mods, different ways of controlling the fight. And that's what's surprising for me. From the outside, Pragmata looks like it might be just a pretty straightforward action game with like a gimmick attached. Then you actually start messing with the systems and realize there's way more to like a build style here than the game first lets on. It wasn't just shoot the weak spot, dodge the attacks, and repeat forever like it is in a lot of action games. The fun came from figuring out how I wanted to control the fight, then building around that. Pragmata is doing something I wish a lot of other games did, and that's change the rhythm and combat systems enough that when you progress, you're never able to get too comfortable with them because they never get boring because they're always changing. And that's really the thing Pragmata does so well. It keeps that's really the thing, one of the things Pragmata does so well, because it does a lot of them. It keeps changing enough for the loop to not get stale at all. You get comfortable with one weapon, then the game gives you something else that kind of completely changes the way you play or approach fights. You start figuring out one hacking style, then a new upgrade changes how you want to even approach that kind of fight or that kind of upgrade. Or maybe you have a different kind of hack that instead of freezing enemies makes them want to fight against each other. Or maybe you have a kind of hack that makes it so that every time you hack them, they take more and more damage. There's a lot of variety in the playstyle here with the combat. And even the bosses feel like they're built to make you use those systems instead of just making your way through another enlarged health bar, once again, like a lot of action games are. That's the same thing that carries into Pragmata 2 with not just its creativity for combat, but its exploration. Its exploration is a huge part of why this game works so well. The exploration works so well in Pragmata because the game understands one very simple thing that you would think would be very obvious, but it's not. If I go out of my way to find a secret, do not reward me with bullshit.
What's in the box? Not till you give me the What's gun. In the fucking box?
That sounds obvious, like I said, but we've all played the games where you're either climbing through vents, or you solve some annoying side path, or you jump across some kind of platforming challenge, you finally find some hidden chest you wanted to get to, and it basically gives you something you never wanted or needed. Pragmata usually does not do that. When I found hidden stuff, it felt like it mattered. It felt like I really needed this. It felt like, oh, this is actually going to help me, and I was happy to get it. Maybe it helped with weapon upgrades. Maybe it gave me something useful for hacking. Maybe it opened up a mod that made me rethink part of my build and want to change it around. Whatever it was, I usually felt like, okay, that was worth looking for. That was worth getting. That was worth spending my time for. And that's important because this game gives you actual reasons to go back through areas. There's like light Metroidvania elements where you'll see places you can't reach yet, then later you get the right scanning upgrades and suddenly that old path is back and your brain's like, oh wait, I remember that place I couldn't go through yet. Now I can scan that, get rid of the obstruction in the way, and I can maybe find that hidden thing I was trying to get to. That kind of backtracking works because the game is not making you do it just to pad time in or just to add things into the game for the sake of making it longer. It's tied to the stuff you actually care about. You want to explore because you want more upgrades. You want more build options, more ways to make Hugh and Diana stronger and work together better. The movement helps too. It's genuinely fun just messing around in these areas. The moon area has this zero gravity feel that you'll reach later on in the game, so you're just like floating around. Jumping feels a lot different, almost like zero G. You're looking for things in a way that feels different than you were in earlier sections. Then you have other areas that start playing with weird puzzles like cranes, boxes shifting from doing different kinds of factory things in the warehouses you're in, these platforms and these little environmental things that change around depending on which switches you hit. And a lot of them just lead to little puzzles or little other side items or things that you wouldn't have to have actually gone and got, but you feel good because you solved this little puzzle or you made your way through. Hey, how do I get there? You make your way through this little hallway and you actually manage to find it. That feels good and rewarding. And like I said, especially when the item is something that you actually want or can use. And I really love when games do that. Give me a good reason to actually poke around and want to explore. Give me a weird little path that I can find and a little side path. Let me jump across something and go to this weird little secret side room. Oh, how the hell do I get over there? And then spend 5 minutes trying to platform across and figuring out and then actually feel rewarded when I get there. That's the good stuff. When you bring everything back to the hub too, it all feels like this one giant large loop in a really good way that they figured out how to make a gameplay loop inside of a gameplay loop almost. Because when you're in the hub, it's got all its own activities you have to do. You're upgrading your weapons, you're messing with your hacking mods, you're tweaking your setup around, and then you realize, wow, the exploration really does feel like it's part of the game in a way that feels meaningful. It's part of the same machine and everything feeds into each other, and it's not just look at this cool large environment for the sake of having this cool large environment, which is really awesome. This is another one of the things that, like I said, makes the game feel so well all the way throughout. The fighting makes you want better tools. The exploration gives you those tools. The hub gives you reasons to actually use what you found. Even the collectibles that don't have some direct effect on the actual gameplay have some kind of meaningful job back at your home shelter. Added combos with Diana, or ways for her to interact with the base or with you. Everything has a meaning behind it with tons of variety and options. And that gameplay first mindset that I keep talking about, that I think the devs really had when they were creating this, where everything had to be gameplay and fun first, shows up in a place I really didn't expect in this game, which turned out to be one of my favorite things in the entire game. Real quick though, a few things I just have to say first. If you enjoy my content, what I do here on the channel, then I really appreciate if you hit the like and the sub buttons if you haven't, or if you're new here. I'm here every week talking about video games and the video game industry side of things too. So if that's something you're into, then hitting all the buttons at the bottom just helps the channel grow. So I'd really appreciate that. Now let's get on with the video. Now I want to quickly talk about these things that I mentioned earlier that were some of my favorite things in the entire game that I didn't expect. And I really have to give Pragmata credit for it. And that's the training missions. Because these could have easily been boring tutorial room, padded on garbage that a lot of games add just to kind of add a little bit of extra challenge for you to do when you're bored. That they do, like I said, in many games. Shoot this target, dodge this attack, congratulations, you've discovered buttons. Like, these actually felt like their own little side mode though, and their own little side thing. I'd be so happy to even see a full game of just these missions. They reminded me of like Metal Gear Solid VR missions, and I mean like the actual PS1 game, Metal Gear Solid VR missions, for anybody who actually remembers that. That's a major compliment, by the way. It has the same kind of like, let me mess with all the mechanics and systems for a bit and actually get better at them type of synergy and energy when you're playing it. That makes you want to just kind of mess around with the systems and see how good you can do for the challenges. And in a game like Pragmata, that matters because so much of the fun comes from learning, like I said, how all these little systems connect. The hacking, the weapons, the timing, the way you control enemies, all of that gets better the more comfortable you get with playing with it. So having these little tutorial missions that had all these extra little side challenges where you could beat the tutorial mission, or I shouldn't even call it tutorial, training mission, and then you would have extra challenges within that training mission that would allow you to figure out how to get the King's Crown or figure out how to get 3 stars in the mission instead of just passing all the little missions individually. If you could do everything all at once within a time limit. It was honestly some of the most challenging content in the entire game, but it was also some of the most fun content in the entire game, and I'd love to see more of it. So giving you, like I said, a separate space to experiment with all this stuff without slowing down the main game is a really smart idea. And where you access all of that is back at your home hub, which makes that home hub even funner to build on. Like I said, every collectible, everything you get, every little item, everything that goes back to that home base makes that home base that much more fun to interact with. It's a small thing, but I think it adds to the bigger feeling of what Pragmata does with this game really cares about being fun to play. Now, I've done a lot to talk about Pragmata's mechanics and all its systems and how they all feed into each other and work so well. But a part I did not expect in this game was how much personality Hugh and Diana gave the whole thing. I'm not going to spoil the later story stuff because a lot of that works better when you experience it for yourself. But I will say this, Hugh and Diana work in a way that's much better than I expected. You're protecting this little android while she's helping you escape this moon base, and it gives this weirdly wholesome team dynamic about it without getting corny or overly campy. And because Diana is tied directly into the hacking, she's not just some like cute little side character hanging around like in the cutscenes or this little backpack you wear that kind of just talks to you once in a while. She matters when every fight starts. She matters through the entire game. And that small little connection they have does a lot for the game. They consistently insert little moments during the combat. Even during the combat, there's certain things that can happen to you where there's a combat animation to make you really feel like you two are working together. And like you're not controlling two separate entities, like you're controlling two of these at once at the same time, working in unison. They really created that amazing duo feeling of two people fighting at once without making it confusing. And it really connects. And that's where Pragmata starts feeling bigger than just, oh, this is a cool new Capcom game too. This is where the AAA industry conversation comes in, and also the part of this game that I respect the most. Capcom took a swing on a brand new thing here. No famous title doing the heavy lifting. It's not a Resident Evil. It's not a Mega Man. It's not anything they've had before. It's brand new. No nostalgia safety net. No remember this franchise from your childhood. It's got a new game coming out. Like Pragmata had to actually stand there and prove itself on its own. And in a company like Capcom that has a roster full of well-known franchises, that this budget could have easily just gone towards and been much safer with instead of choosing to release this, I think that that's a really good thing. And I think proving itself, it does. And I think it does it well. I think this game really does prove itself, which means something in the AAA space, because the AAA space has gotten very good at looking expensive while not feeling great. That's not the same thing as feeling memorable, just looking good. And that's what a lot of games do nowadays. They just look good, but they don't feel memorable or good to play. Pragmata feels memorable because it has new ideas. It feels like a game where the mechanics came first, and then the how do we sell this factor came later. And that's the kind of risk I want more big studios taking. It seems like with all the success it's had now, it is going to become a franchise, and we will be seeing more of Hugh and Diana in the future. And I could see her even becoming somewhat of a secondary mascot and being crossed over into other franchises or with other franchises marketing. A Pragmata 2 is definitely coming, so I'm going to look forward to seeing how they expand on all the systems and all the gameplay and everything they've laid forward in this first games. And I'm really excited to see what comes next. There is one thing I must mention though, and as much as I respect the risk they took, I still have to come back to this one thing that almost made me not enjoy Pragmata half as much as I did. And it honestly, if I'm being true, ruined the experience almost for me. And I had to restart the game 6 hours into the game. And I know I mentioned that at the top of the video, so I'll discuss that quickly now. After about 6 hours, I realized I made the game way less fun for myself. And I'm not going to say this in some annoying, you have to play it the right kind of way, this is the only way to play it type of way. But I'm just saying, for me, once I started upgrading my main health bar too much on normal mode, which is the mode you have to play through first, the game started to feel way too easy and safe. And that really matters in a game like Pragmata, because as I said, the whole exploration and finding all the upgrades and everything feeding into itself really matters, because if you're going around and looking for upgrades and you don't actually need those upgrades, then it makes finding them feel not as good. The fights make you want better tools. Exploration gives you upgrades and mods. The hub lets you turn that stuff into a better build. Then you go back out in the loop and you try again and it keeps moving. But if fights stop feeling dangerous, that loop loses a lot of its magic. Healing items matter way less. Hidden upgrades matter even less, because exploring starts feeling less exciting because you already feel like you're a tank walking through the level. So I restarted my playthrough around 6 hours in and left my main health upgrade bar alone completely. And honestly, that made the game so much better. Suddenly, healing packs mattered, mods mattered, every upgrade felt useful. Finding secrets felt really good again because I actually wanted to find them, because I actually needed them, because I actually needed the help. There's 3 main bars you upgrade alongside your weapons and mods: your main health bar, your main weapon damage bar, and your hacking bar. Those 3 are it. What you really should do is treat that main health bar upgrade like a difficulty bar and spend points on your health bar when you feel like you really need it. It did not turn Pragmata into some miserable Souls-like experience. It just gave the systems a reason to actually mingle, and the entire game felt much better because of it. The exploration feels so good when you actually find some upgrades you need or want because you've been struggling a little bit. And it's not like you're going to have a bunch of extra points just sitting there, so you have to kind of like have a willpower to like not spend them. No, you spend them on other things. You use them on your hacking, use them on your weapon damage, use them on everything else, and that balances the experience out. You're just not walking around like some basically invincible tank, which is what happens if you upgrade your health bar too much. So to cut this short, if you want a bit more tension in the game, my advice is simple. Do not touch that main health bar until you really need to. Use the healing mods, use the hacks, use the tools the game gives you. Just don't accidentally turn yourself into a walking indestructible unit too early. I mean, unless you really want to. There is a lunatic mode you can access once you beat the game, but I'm not playing through a game twice just to get to a harder difficulty setting. So a perfect game, just don't ruin the difficulty for yourself is all I'm getting at. So is Pragmata exactly what the AAA industry and the AAA player needed? I can honestly say I think yes. Not because it's perfect. I just spent the last few minutes telling you how I almost ruined the game for myself just because of the standard difficulty settings. So clearly I have some notes on what could be done different. But this is the kind of AAA game that I want more of. A new IP with actual ideas, a combat system that feels fresh and innovative and like it has its own identity, a world that feels weird but in a good way, mechanics that all feed into each other, and most importantly, A game that feels like somebody cared about the gameplay before the marketing department. Like the game comes first, the fun factor comes first, and everything else comes after. And as I said, that's the part I respect about this game so much. It almost feels, not in a bad way, but almost like one of those old PS2 games type thing where it's like the gameplay comes first, you know, and it wasn't too much about everything else. So now, after the delays, after everyone wondering what this game would even be like or play like, after the release, the hype factor, I think Pragmata delivered. And now that this is being turned into a full franchise, I'm very excited to see what comes next. Capcom has some of the most fun IPs in gaming under its belt, and I think Pragmata sits nicely right there beside them. That's my vid on Pragmata. I hope I was able to raise some good points. Please let me know what your thoughts are everything around this game, and just tell me what you think about Capcom, because in my opinion, I think they're crushing it right now. And man, this game made me want a lot more Mega Man stuff really bad. I know there's a new Mega Man game coming in the future, but like it just, the whole, like obviously inspiration from Mega Man, like just can we please do more with that IP, Capcom, please? Anyways, I'm always hanging out down in the comments. Let me know all your thoughts, and I'll see you guys next week. Ciao.